Picture this. A man wakes at 4 a.m. Cold floor beneath his feet. No alarm, no motivation, just movement. The room is dark, silent. The world outside is still sleeping. He doesn't stretch. He doesn't check his phone. He doesn't wait to feel ready. He simply stands, walks to the door, and begins. This is not discipline. This is something far more dangerous. Miyamoto Musashi never talked about discipline. He talked about mushotoku, non-seeking, acting without the need for motivation, reward, or even desire. He didn't fight because he was disciplined. He fought because fighting was as natural as breathing. He didn't train to prove something. He trained because training was his identity. And here's a truth most people never understand. Discipline is a trap. It's a game you play with yourself, promising rewards for good behavior like a parent bribing a child. It's exhausting. It's unsustainable. It's built on the false premise that you need to force yourself to do what matters. But what if you didn't need to force yourself? What if action became automatic? What if you stopped negotiating with your own mind? What if the very idea of motivation became irrelevant? This is what Musashi discovered. This is what changed everything. And this is what will separate you from the 99% who are still waiting to feel motivated, still looking for the next self-help book, still trapped in the cycle of starting and stopping, beginning and quitting. The world sells you discipline, books, courses, programs, morning routines, habit trackers. They tell you to wake up early, to build habits, to use willpower, to push through resistance. And it works. For a week, maybe a month, you feel good, powerful, in control. Then you collapse, you break, you return to who you were, and you wonder what's wrong with you? Why can't you maintain it? Why does discipline never stick? But here's the truth. Nothing is wrong with you. The problem is the method itself. Why? Because discipline treats the symptom, not the disease. The disease is identity, who you believe you are at the deepest level. And until you change that, nothing else matters. You can wake up at 5 a.m. for a month, but if you still see yourself as someone who struggles to wake up, you'll eventually revert. You can work out every day for 90 days. But if you still see yourself as someone who isn't athletic, you'll find a way to quit, because your brain will always pull you back to alignment with your identity. Always. Most people think Musashi was the most disciplined man who ever lived. They look at his life and see nothing but rigid self-control, iron willpower, unbreakable determination. They're wrong. Musashi was a man who erased the gap between thought and action. Let me explain what this means. When you use discipline, there's always a battle, a war inside your head. Part of you wants to act, the rational part, the part that knows what's good for you. Part of you resists, the emotional part, the part that craves comfort and ease. You use willpower to force the resistant part into submission. You grit your teeth, you push through, you win the battle. This works for a while. But willpower is finite. It's a resource that depletes throughout the day. And when it does, you collapse back into old patterns. You give in, you indulge, you break your streak, and the cycle begins again. Musashi understood something deeper. He understood that the goal wasn't to strengthen willpower. The goal was to eliminate internal resistance entirely. He called this heijoshin, the mind of no mind, a state where action flows without friction, without hesitation, without the need for motivation. Think about it. When you're truly skilled at something, you don't debate whether to do it. A master pianist doesn't argue with himself about practicing. He sits, he plays, because that's what pianists do. A surgeon doesn't motivate herself to focus during surgery. Focus is automatic, because that's who she is. The action is frictionless. This is what Musashi achieved, not through discipline, through identity transformation. He didn't see himself as someone who needed to train. He saw himself as someone who was training, always, in every moment. Walking was training. The way he moved through space, the awareness of his surroundings. Eating was training. The mindfulness, the simplicity, the intentional fueling of his body. Sleeping was training. The discipline of rest, the preparation for battle. There was no separation between life and practice. Every breath was practice. Every moment was the way. And here's what that means for you. You don't need more discipline. You need to become the kind of person for whom the action is inevitable. You need to stop trying to force yourself and start becoming yourself. The self that doesn't hesitate. The self that doesn't negotiate. The self that simply moves. Because when action becomes identity, discipline becomes irrelevant. You don't need to motivate yourself to be yourself. You just are. Let's go back to 1612. The island of Ganryu, the duel with Sasaki Kojiro. Most people focus on the strategy, the late arrival, the wooden sword carved from an oar during the boat ride, the psychological warfare. They study it like a chess match, analyzing moves and counter moves. But they miss the deeper lesson. Musashi didn't prepare for that duel the night before. He didn't spend weeks developing a special strategy. He prepared for it his entire life. Every duel before Kojiro was preparation for Kojiro. Every victory, every close call, every moment where death brushed against him, every hour of solitude in the mountains, learning to be comfortable with silence and discomfort, every moment of deliberate hardship, sleeping on cold ground, going days without food, training in rain and snow. He didn't wake up that morning and force himself to be ready. He was ready because readiness was his default state. This is the difference between discipline and identity. Discipline says, I will force myself to do the hard thing. Identity says, I am the kind of person who does the hard thing. Discipline is exhausting. It requires constant effort, constant vigilance, constant negotiation with yourself. Identity is effortless. It's just who you are. Musashi understood this at a cellular level. He didn't rely on motivation because motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes like the weather. He relied on automation, on turning the right action into reflex, on making the correct choice inevitable. And you can do the same. But first, you have to understand what's stopping you. The truth is, you're fighting the wrong battle. You're trying to overcome laziness, to defeat procrastination, to conquer weakness. You see these as external enemies, forces to be fought and overcome. But these aren't the real enemies. The real enemy is the story you tell yourself about who you are. Every time you say, I'm not a morning person, you reinforce that identity. You tell your brain, this is who we are. We don't wake up early. Every time you say, I'm not good at this, you lock it in. You cement the belief that this thing is foreign to you. Every time you say, I'll try, you're admitting you don't believe. You're signaling to your subconscious that failure is expected. And your brain listens. Your brain believes every word you say about yourself. And it makes that story true. Because your brain is designed to maintain consistency with your self-image. If you believe you're lazy, your brain will find ways to be lazy, to prove you right. If you believe you're disciplined, your brain will find ways to be disciplined, to maintain that identity. This is called self-verification theory in psychology, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Your brain would rather be consistent than happy. So it will sabotage your efforts to change if those efforts conflict with your identity. This is why discipline fails, because you're trying to change behavior without changing identity. And behavior always reverts to identity eventually, always. Here's the problem with discipline. It treats action as optional. Every time you rely on discipline, you're engaging in internal negotiation. Should I train today? I'm tired. Maybe I should rest. Should I work on this project? I'm not feeling inspired. Maybe tomorrow. Should I wake up early? I didn't sleep well. Maybe I deserve to sleep in. The moment you ask the question, you've already lost. Because now your brain has an out. It can argue, it can rationalize, it can delay. And your brain is excellent at rationalization. It can justify anything. Musashi never gave his brain that option. He operated on what modern psychologists call implementation intentions. Not, I will train if I feel like it. But when the sun rises, I train. No exceptions. He removed choice from the equation. This is critical. Choice is the enemy of action. Every decision costs energy. Every negotiation drains willpower. But when action is automatic, when it's non-negotiable, there's no cost, no internal friction. You just do. This is what Musashi wrote in Dokoro. Do not act following customary beliefs. He didn't mean reject tradition. He meant reject the illusion of choice. Most people follow customs that keep them weak. The custom of waiting to feel motivated. The custom of seeking comfort. The custom of making excuses. The custom of asking themselves permission to do what they already know they should do. Musashi rejected all of it. He built a life where right action was the only option, where there was no choice, no negotiation, no debate, just movement, just action, just the way. And here's how you do the same. Step 1, destroy the negotiation. Identify the actions that matter most in your life, the non-negotiables, the things that if you did them consistently for 5 years would transform everything. For most people, it's simple. Train your body, train your mind, work on your craft, eliminate distractions. These are the pillars, the foundation of everything else. Now here's the key. You don't decide whether to do these things. You decide when and how. Not should I work out today, but I work out at 6 a.m. Always, no exceptions. Not should I work on my business tonight, but from 8 to 10 p.m., I work. No phone, no distractions, no excuses. You remove the decision. You create a law for yourself. Musashi lived by laws, not rules. Laws. Rules can be broken. You can make exceptions. You can negotiate. Laws are absolute. They're not suggestions. They're not guidelines. They're immutable. He had a law. When I see an opponent, I prepare to strike. Not should I strike. Not let me assess if this is the right moment. Just preparation. Automatic. Inevitable. You need the same laws that govern your life. When the alarm rings, I rise. No snooze button, no negotiation, no 5 more minutes. When I enter the gym, I train. No checking phone. No half-hearted sets. No cutting the workout short. When I sit at my desk, I work. No social media, no distraction, no fake productivity. These aren't suggestions. They're laws of your existence. And the moment you treat them as negotiable, you've lost. Because negotiation is the door through which discipline dies. Every time you negotiate, you weaken the law. You teach your brain that the law isn't really a law. And eventually, it stops being one. Step 2, make the environment enforce the law. Musashi didn't rely on internal strength alone. He was smart enough to know that willpower is limited, so he designed his life to make weakness impossible. He owned almost nothing. A sword, basic clothing. That's it. He slept on the floor. No bed, no comfort, just hard ground. He avoided luxury. No fine meals, no entertainment, no distractions. Why? Because comfort creates friction. When you're surrounded by distractions and temptations, every moment becomes a battle. You have to resist the TV, resist the snacks, resist the comfort. And resistance depletes willpower. But when your environment is stripped down to essentials, action becomes the path of least resistance. There's nothing to resist, nothing to negotiate with, just the work, just the way. In the modern world, this means remove the things that make bad decisions easy. Delete social media from your phone. Don't just promise yourself you won't use it, delete it. Remove junk food from your house. Don't rely on willpower to avoid eating it. Remove the option. Eliminate time wasters from your schedule. Cancel subscriptions. Delete apps. Unfollow accounts. Don't trust willpower. Eliminate the need for willpower. Your environment should make the right choice obvious. Musashi's environment was extreme. Caves, mountains, bare rooms, isolation. Yours doesn't need to be that severe, but it does need to be intentional. Look around your space right now. What's making it easy to fail? The TV in your bedroom, the snacks in your pantry, the video game console in your living room, the comfortable couch where you rest for hours? Remove them, all of them. Make your environment a temple of focus. Because here's the truth. You're not strong enough to resist temptation 50 times a day. No one is. The people who seem disciplined aren't resisting more, they're resisting less because they've removed the temptations. But you are strong enough to remove the temptation once. One decision to delete the app, one decision to throw out the junk food, one decision to cancel the subscription, and then the battle is over. Forever. Step 3, train identity, not behavior. This is where most people fail. They focus on what they do instead of who they are. They say, I'm trying to work out more. Trying, as if it's foreign. As if it's something they're experimenting with. They say, I'm trying to be more productive. Trying, as if productivity is something outside themselves. Musashi never said, I'm trying to be a warrior. He was a warrior. In every cell, in every breath, in every thought. And that's the shift you must make. Not, I'm trying to build a business, but I am an entrepreneur. Not, I'm trying to get in shape, but I am an athlete. Not, I'm trying to be successful, but I am successful. I'm just in the early stages. The moment you shift identity, behavior becomes automatic because you're not forcing yourself to act against your nature. You're acting in alignment with your nature. And when action aligns with identity, there's no resistance. Let me give you a concrete example. Two people decide to quit smoking. Person A says, I'm trying to quit smoking. Person B says, I'm not a smoker. When offered a cigarette, person A has to resist. They have to use willpower. They have to remember their commitment. They have to fight the craving. It's exhausting. And eventually, they give in. Person B doesn't fight. They simply decline. No thanks, I don't smoke. Because smokers smoke. And they're not a smoker. Same action, zero friction. This is the power of identity. And it works for everything. I'm trying to eat healthy versus I'm a healthy person. I'm trying to wake up early versus I'm a morning person. I'm trying to work hard versus I'm a worker. Work is what I do. The shift seems small, semantic almost, but it changes everything. Because your brain will fight to maintain consistency with your identity. If you see yourself as a morning person, sleeping in creates cognitive dissonance. It feels wrong, and your brain will push you to wake up early to resolve that dissonance. But if you see yourself as someone who's trying to wake up early, sleeping in is just expected, normal, who you are. Now let's talk about the science. Modern neuroscience backs this up completely. Studies on habit formation show that willpower-based behavior change has a failure rate of over 80%. Why? Because it's exhausting. It's unsustainable. It fights against human nature. But identity-based behavior change, where you shift your self-concept first, has a success rate of over 70%. Because once your brain believes this is who I am, it will fight to maintain consistency. Your brain hates cognitive dissonance. It's psychologically painful. If you see yourself as disciplined, but you skip workouts, your brain experiences stress. Real, measurable stress. So it does one of two things. It changes your behavior to match your identity, or it changes your identity to match your behavior. Most people let their identity drift downward. They start seeing themselves as lazy, undisciplined, weak. They miss one workout and think, I'm not cut out for this. They fail once and think, I'm just not a disciplined person. And then they become that. Because the brain says, okay, if that's who we are, let's be consistent with it. Musashi did the opposite. He locked in an identity so strong that his brain had no choice but to enforce it. He saw himself as a warrior. Not sometimes. Not when it was convenient. Always. And his brain, desperate to resolve the dissonance, made warrior-like behavior automatic. This is the hack. This is the secret. You don't build discipline. You build identity. And identity builds behavior. There's a study from Stanford that proves this. Researchers took two groups of people trying to exercise more. Group one was told to track their workouts, to use discipline and willpower, to set goals and push themselves. Standard advice. What everyone tells you to do. Group two was told something different. You are the kind of person who exercises regularly. Just that phrase, repeated daily, A simple identity statement. No tracking, no goals, no discipline talk, just identity. After 6 months, Group 2 had 50% better adherence. Why? Because they weren't trying to exercise, they were being exercisers. The action became an expression of self, not a task to be completed. This is what Musashi understood 400 years before modern science caught up. He didn't try to be a warrior. He was a warrior. And being a warrior meant training. Always. Without question. But here's the hard part. You can't fake identity. You can't just tell yourself, I'm a warrior, and expect it to work. You can't just repeat affirmations in the mirror and think that's enough. Identity is earned through action, through proof, through accumulated evidence. Musashi didn't wake up one day and decide he was a master swordsman. He fought 60 duels. He trained in isolation for years. He endured unimaginable hardship. And through that process, through those thousands of small actions, his identity solidified. So if you want to transform your identity, you have to start acting as if, not lying to yourself, not pretending, but taking action that proves the identity is real. If you want to be a writer, you must write every day, no exceptions. Not when inspired, not when you feel like it, every day. If you want to be an athlete, you must train consistently, without negotiation, not when motivated, not when you see results, consistently. If you want to be successful, you must work relentlessly, without excuses, not when it's convenient, not when it's easy, relentlessly. Each action is a vote for the identity you're building. Musashi said, today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Every day, you're either strengthening your identity or weakening it. Every action is proof, and your brain is watching, keeping score, building a case. He says he's a writer, but he didn't write today. Maybe he's not really a writer. She says she's disciplined, but she slept in. Maybe she's not really disciplined. Your brain is the judge, and it judges by evidence, not by intention. So you have to provide evidence daily, relentlessly. Here's how this works in practice. You want to become a morning person. So you wake up early. Once, your brain says, interesting. But this could be random, a fluke. You wake up early again, and again, and again. After a week, your brain says, pattern detected. But we'll see if it lasts. People always quit. After a month, your brain says, this might be who we are now, but I'm not convinced yet. After 90 days, your brain says, this is who we are. We're morning people now. And at that point, sleeping in becomes the violation, not waking up early. The identity has flipped, but most people quit at day 7, day 14, day 21. Before the identity locks in, they expect instant transformation, immediate results, and they wonder why discipline never works. But identity isn't built in 21 days. It's built through months of consistent action, sometimes years. Musashi trained for decades before his identity was unshakable. You need patience, persistence, faith in the process. Let me tell you about a modern example. There's a CEO I studied, billionaire, built 3 companies from nothing, exited each for 9 figures. When asked about his morning routine, his work ethic, his discipline, he said something shocking. I don't have discipline. I don't even think about it. I wake up, I work, that's it. People assumed he was lying or being humble or that he was naturally gifted. They wanted the secret routine, the special system, the hidden technique. But when you dig deeper, when you study his life, you see the truth. He spent 10 years building the identity of someone who works every single day, no matter what. Sick, he worked. Tired, he worked. Unmotivated, he worked. Christmas, he worked. Vacation, he worked. Weekends, he worked. And after 10 years, the identity was locked in, permanent, unshakable. Now he doesn't need discipline because working is who he is. Not working would feel wrong, foreign, like a violation of self. This is the power of identity. This is what Musashi understood. And this is what separates the top 1% from everyone else. The top 1% aren't more disciplined. They've just built identities so strong that right action is automatic. They've trained for so long that the behavior became unconscious. And once something is unconscious, it costs nothing. No willpower, no motivation, no negotiation. It just is, like breathing, like walking, like existing. Now here's where it gets even deeper. Musashi wrote about Mushin, no mind. It's the state where you act without thought, without hesitation, without internal debate. In combat, Mushin is the moment where the swordsman reacts instantly, without thinking. Pure instinct, pure flow. The opponent attacks. The sword moves. No thought between stimulus and response. In life, Mushin is the state where you execute without friction. You don't think about training, you just train. You don't think about working, you just work. You don't think about discipline, you just act. This is the ultimate goal. This is mastery. And you reach it by doing the same thing over and over until it becomes unconscious. Until the action is so deeply wired into your nervous system that it happens without thought. Musashi didn't think about drawing his sword. His hand moved before his mind registered the threat. Decades of training had created a neural pathway so strong that conscious thought would actually slow him down. This is what elite athletes call flow state, what musicians call being in the zone. And you can achieve it, but only through relentless repetition. Not motivated repetition, not disciplined repetition, just repetition. Day after day, week after week, year after year, until the action becomes reflex. Neuroscientists have studied this phenomenon. They call it automaticity. When you repeat an action enough times, your brain creates a neural pathway. At first, the pathway is weak, like a footpath through a forest, barely visible. But every repetition strengthens it, widens it, makes it easier to follow. Eventually it becomes a highway, 8 lanes, paved, well lit, and your brain defaults to it automatically. This is why professional basketball players make free throws with their eyes closed. They've shot 100,000 free throws. The pathway is so strong, so automatic, that conscious thought would actually interfere. Thinking about the shot would make them miss. Musashi built these highways for everything. Drawing his sword, reading an opponent's intention, striking with precision, moving in combat. And you can build them too. For waking up early, for working focused hours, for training your body, for creating your art. But only if you repeat the action long enough for the pathway to form. Most people give up too soon. They want results in 21 days, 30 days, 90 days. But real automaticity takes months, sometimes years. Musashi trained for decades. And by the end, he didn't think, he didn't decide, he didn't force. He just was. The action and the actor became one. Here's the brutal truth. Most people will never achieve this. Why? Because they're still negotiating with themselves. They're still asking, should I? Instead of just doing. They're still relying on motivation, on discipline, on external rewards. They're still waiting to feel ready, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for inspiration. And because of that, they will always struggle. They will always be at war with themselves. Every day will be a battle. Should I or shouldn't I? Do I feel like it? Is today the day? Exhausting, endless, unsustainable. But you don't have to be that person. You can choose the path Musashi chose. The path of identity, the path of automation, the path of mushotoku, acting without seeking, moving without reason. You can become the kind of person who doesn't need to force themselves because the action is natural, inevitable, effortless, but it requires a choice, a commitment. You have to decide, am I willing to endure the discomfort of transformation? Because make no mistake, this path is not easy. It requires you to act before you feel ready, to continue when you don't see results, to persist when everyone around you quits, to endure the isolation that comes with commitment. Musashi walked alone for most of his life, not because he was antisocial, not because he hated people, but because few could match his commitment. Few could walk his path. Most people wanted glory without the sacrifice, the title without the training. They wanted to be warriors without decades of hardship. So he walked alone. You'll face the same isolation. Your friends won't understand. They'll invite you out when you need to train. They'll mock your commitment. Your family will question you. Why are you so extreme? Why can't you just relax? Why can't you be normal? They'll call you obsessed, unbalanced, too intense. And they'll be right, because mastery is extreme. It's supposed to be. Balance is for people who want to be average at everything. Extremity is for people who want to be exceptional at something. You can't have both. Musashi chose extremity. He chose obsession. He chose the path, and the path demanded everything. It still does. So let me ask you, what identity are you building right now? Not what identity you want to build, what identity you're actually building. Because your identity is revealed by your actions, not your intentions. Are you someone who waits for motivation, or someone who acts regardless? Your actions today answer that question. Are you someone who makes excuses, or someone who executes? Your actions this week answered that question. Are you someone who tries, or someone who is? Your actions this month answered that question. Because here's the final lesson from Musashi. You are what you repeatedly do, not what you intend to do, not what you wish you did, not what you promise you'll do tomorrow. What you actually do. Every action is a statement of identity. Every moment is a choice. And the life you build is the sum of those choices. Musashi chose to be a warrior every single day, in every single moment. When he woke up, he chose the warrior's path. When he ate, he chose simplicity and discipline. When he trained, he chose perfection over comfort. When he rested, he chose preparation over pleasure. And that choice, repeated 10,000 times, made him legendary. You have the same choice. Every moment, every day. The question is, will you make it? Or will you continue the cycle? Another Monday, another fresh start, another promise to yourself, another failure by Friday. Because that's what discipline without identity creates. An endless loop. Motivation on Monday, discipline on Tuesday, struggle on Wednesday, excuses on Thursday, collapse on Friday, guilt on Saturday, promises on Sunday, and repeat forever. But identity breaks the loop. It makes the action inevitable, and inevitability creates results. When action is inevitable, results become a matter of time, not effort. You don't need to work harder. You need to be different. And being different starts with a choice. Right now, not tomorrow, not Monday, not when you feel ready. Now, let's go deeper into what Musashi actually practiced. He lived by a principle called Tanren, forging. Like a blade is forged through heat, pressure, and relentless pounding, a warrior is forged through hardship. The sword doesn't choose comfort. It endures the fire, the hammer, the fold. And through that process, it becomes unbreakable. But here's what most people miss. Musashi didn't seek hardship for hardship's sake. He wasn't a masochist. He wasn't trying to suffer. He sought it because he understood that comfort destroys capability. Every time you choose comfort, you weaken yourself. Every time you avoid discomfort, you lose edge. This is why he slept on bare floors, why he owned nothing, why he embraced cold, hunger, and exhaustion. Not because he enjoyed suffering, but because he knew that a soft life creates a soft mind, and a soft mind loses. In combat, a soft mind hesitates, doubts, fears, and hesitation means death. In the modern world, we've engineered comfort into everything. Climate control, instant food, endless entertainment, soft beds, easy transportation. Everything is designed to make life easier, more comfortable, more pleasant. And because of that, we're weaker than ever. Not physically. We have gyms. We have nutrition, science. Mentally, we can't handle boredom. We can't handle silence. We can't handle difficulty. The moment things get hard, we quit. We distract ourselves. We run. 5 minutes of discomfort, and we reach for the phone, the snack, the entertainment. We've lost the ability to sit with difficulty. Musashi would see this as spiritual suicide. Because the only way to build an unbreakable mind is to break it repeatedly and watch it rebuild stronger. This is Tanren. This is forging. And if you want to build a kind of identity that makes action automatic, you must forge yourself. You must seek discomfort intentionally, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you understand that suffering is the furnace where strength is made. Every time you choose the hard path, you become harder. Every time you embrace discomfort, you expand your capacity. And over time, what once seemed impossible becomes easy. Not because it changed, because you changed. This is the path Musashi walked. And it's the path you must walk if you want to become more than average. Here's how you apply Tanren in the modern world. Cold exposure, every morning, no negotiation. Not because it's healthy, though it is, but because it trains your mind to act despite resistance. When you wake up, your body screams no. Your mind says wait. Your comfort-seeking brain offers 1,000 reasons to delay, but you step in anyway. That single act, repeated daily, rewires your brain. It teaches you that discomfort is temporary, that resistance is an illusion, that you are stronger than your fears. And over time, you stop negotiating. You just act. The cold shower becomes a metaphor for life. Do the thing that resists you and watch the resistance disappear. Every morning, you win a battle, a small battle, but battles compound. Win enough small battles and you become undefeatable. Fasting, not for weight loss, for mental clarity. Musashi often went days without food, not because he had to, not because he couldn't afford food, but because hunger sharpens the mind. When you're fasting, you can't rely on food for energy. You can't use eating as a distraction, as comfort, as entertainment. You're forced to sit with discomfort, to master it. And that mastery transfers to everything else. When you can control your hunger, you can control your impulses. When you can delay gratification for 16 hours, you can delay it for 16 months. The skill is the same, just different scales. Start small, skip breakfast, then extend it. Push the boundaries. Not to punish yourself, but to prove yourself. Every hour you fast is evidence. Proof that you control your body, not the other way around. Silence. Extended periods without input. No music, no podcasts, no conversation, no phone, no books. Just silence. Musashi spent months alone in caves. Why? To eliminate external noise and face himself. Most people can't handle 10 minutes of silence. Their mind races, anxiety builds, they panic, they reach for distraction. Because silence is where you meet your true self, and that meeting is terrifying. You realize how weak you are, how dependent you are on external stimulation, how afraid you are of your own thoughts. But if you can sit in that silence and not break, you develop an internal strength that nothing can shake. Start small. 10 minutes of silence. No phone, no book, no distraction. Just you and your thoughts. It will be uncomfortable. agonizing even, but push through, and eventually you'll find something underneath the noise. A calm, a center, a foundation. That's the real you, the one beneath the anxiety and distraction and fear. And once you find that, nothing can rattle you. Today is a victory over yourself of yesterday. Not because you tried harder, but because you became different. You stopped being someone who needs motivation. You became someone who acts. You stopped being someone who relies on discipline. You became someone for whom right action is identity. This is Musashi's truth. This is the path. The question is, are you ready to walk it? Or will you keep waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect feeling? Because here's the final truth. The perfect moment is now, not when you're ready, not when you feel motivated. Now, the duel has already begun. The opponent is yourself. And every moment you delay is a moment you lose. Musashi never delayed. He never hesitated. He saw the opening and he struck. So I'm giving you the opening. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Move.